Welcome to Middle Fingers Up. I'm your host, Kieran, and today's segment is one of those, it's good to Gup Shup, so it's just you and I. Thought it's been a minute, I have a couple of things on my mind, and I was hoping we can talk them out. So today's particular conversation, I've been thinking a lot about what do we really mean when we say, quote unquote, safe space. So I've been hearing this term safe space. I'm sure you are everywhere lately, in social groups, wellness spaces, activist spaces, even friendships. And I keep noticing something like the word is there, but it just seems like the energy often isn't. And so today I wanted to Gup Shup about where safe space actually came from, why it's been such a buzzword, and whether we really understand what it means to be in one or to say we're creating one. Yeah? Can we do it? Okay, so let's start with where safe space comes from, a little bit of historically and clinically. Please add to this. I'm sure you out there have more information, so this is just a part of what I know. I also know that I don't know everything, and so sometimes you get people messaging all sorts of nasty stuff about, did you think about this or did you think about that? And no, maybe I didn't. Glad you did. Glad that you shared. I think there's a way to have these conversations because we don't all know everything, right? So from my understanding, safe spaces, like honestly, didn't start as a trend. They came from marginalized communities, so Black civil rights organizers, feminists, consciousness raising groups, queers and trans communities. And they were spaces created for survival. So places where people could exist without being watched, debated, or harmed. Clinically, which is where my experience comes from in therapeutic spaces that I've worked in over the years, clinically, this idea also shows up in trauma, psychology, group therapy, one-to-one, everything in between. And the first requirement is always the same, and it's safety. It's not vulnerability, it's not sharing, it's literally the word safety. And in these therapeutic spaces, no one is required to disclose trauma in order to belong. And disclosure is really invited. It's never expected. So in my perspective, what safety actually means is that from like a trauma-informed lens, safety means predictability, it means choice, it means consent, and non-retaliation. So it means knowing you won't be punished for being honest. There's also something called psychological safety, and this is something used in leadership, group research. So if you're a supervisor in clinical spaces, supervising clinical teams, this is really required of you in supervisions, in teachings, in training. And what this means is that people, employees, can ask questions, they can disagree, they can make mistakes, or even name harm without fear of embarrassment or backlash. So safety isn't about comfort, it's about freedom from punishment. To be honest, that's truly how we should be parenting, those of us that are parents. So why did this safe space sort of become a buzzword? I think over the last decade, therapeutic language went mainstream. Words like boundaries, words like triggers, words like safe space, they truly, I feel, have helped reduce stigma. There's a reach worldwide. People have access to their social platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and maybe more so than going to a therapeutic space, maybe even, going to therapy. It's easier, it's quicker. People will learn a lot of therapeutic language. So I think that's really not a bad thing on one hand that we've learned But I think what, like that matters. But I think what's happened is the language that's coming up on these social platforms has been moving quite faster than maybe people's actual understanding of what it means. You watch a 30-second clip on TikTok and then we're all experts on it, which in fact isn't quite true. And so calling something a safe space now signals awareness and it sounds inclusive. And sometimes it even becomes a part of a brand or an identity. But again, let's also remember safety isn't declared, it's practiced. So maybe we can talk a little bit about like when the label doesn't match the body. I've been in safe spaces. I've been in all sorts of spaces, as I'm sure you have too. So being in spaces that say they are safe, I've found when I am attuned to myself, I'm like, oh, we're all talking about this as a safe space. We're having some kind of discussion, but my body feels tight. I'm choosing my words carefully. I know what will be welcomed and probably what won't, or at least I'm worried about that. And I trust that information because I trust myself. I know myself in that scenario at the least more so than I know the people and that environment. And because safety isn't what's written on the door, it's what happens when something uncomfortable shows up. So real life examples. So there's like this forced share circle. Those circles where everyone is expected to share something real about themselves, but no one ever says it's okay to pass. So you kind of have to go around. I mean, sometimes it's like meant to be an icebreaker, but everyone feels uncomfortable or most people feel uncomfortable, but no one has said, hey, if you don't feel like saying anything, it's okay, you can pass. Clinically, forced sharing activates the nervous system. And so choice is what creates safety, not, again, disclosure. And if passing in those kind of moments isn't an option, it's not a safe space. It's pressure. And I think something else is sometimes someone will say, this is a safe space, you can be honest. And the moment honesty shows up, defensiveness follows. So sometimes this is a parent-child interaction. Sometimes this is like a partner interaction. Sometimes it's a boss and their employee. Often if there's like a power differential in there, that's like something to be aware of and worrisome, but it can also happen in friendships as well. And when that happens, that often tells us that safety was offered, but not actually available. And so then there's like the wellness or these activist kind of spaces. In some wellness or activist spaces, there's an unspoken rule about how emotional you're allowed to be. So if you're too calm, you're disengaged. If you're too emotional, you're oversharing and bro, go get a therapist. Oh my God, you're wild, you're over the top. And so then safety kind of disappears when there's only one acceptable way to show up. And I know there's other examples. A lot of you have experienced them. So of course, this is an open conversation. So send them our way. Maybe you want to carry this conversation together and bring this to light. That would be amazing. Maybe we can kind of go into a little bit about cultural and even being South Asian, kind of these kinds of spaces. So from my experience in a lot of South Asian family or community spaces, safety can get confused with silence. So not rocking the boat isn't really safety. It's avoidance. We're trying to just keep the peace. That whole harmony culture we talked about a few episodes ago, both Cam Bassier and I. So for many of us, people pleasing or staying quiet wasn't our personality. When you fill out those personality trait things, what kind of person are you? Are you a leader or follower? It was a survival strategy. It's something that we were expected to do in our households, depending on what kind of household we came from. And so the key word over safety was silence. So I think sometimes we push vulnerability too fast. And so when people push vulnerability too quickly, it's often not about connection. It's also about anxiety. Discomfort feels unsafe to the listener. So silence, boundaries, or I don't want to share can trigger uncertainty. And so I feel sometimes people ask for your story because they don't know how to sit with not knowing, if that makes sense. So fill the space, let's talk, look at me being brave, asking you these questions. But I don't really know what to do with that information. And then the person sharing might also feel obligated to, or people pleasing. Oh, you're asking me this, I'm going to tell you this. And it can feel like a weird back and forth in that moment or in those moments. So if we just focus on the nervous system for a second. So our nervous systems are always scanning for safety, and how your childhood, if you go back and look at those ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences questionnaire, all of that is going to be a huge factor in how our nervous system has been shaped. So when we talk here and in a lot of other places about go back and do your work, that you owe your inner child, it really is trying to recalibrate, trying to smooth out some of the things our nervous system has picked up, because like we said, it's constantly scanning. So when we feel safe, our breath slows, our body softens, and we think more clearly. We all know kind of how the brain works. When you get to the back of the brain, you're on crisis mode and you're grasping. Front of the brain allows us to think, plan, organize, feel a little bit more in charge. When we don't feel safe, we might over-explain, people please, shut down, or go quiet. So sometimes it's like that fight, fawn, freeze, fight moment. And you may not always have the one, you might have different ones that show up in different ways, but you're trying to overcompensate in some sort of way. And honestly, you guys, for all of us, we all share this, we all have some truth in what we're saying here. None of this is a character flaw. None of this is, oh, we're not good enough or what. It's biology. And I think it's just meeting ourselves with where we're at. It's going to help us manage our nervous system better when we can say, oh, this is how I handle these kinds of things. Maybe we can get a little bit into like what a safe space is not. So in my opinion, a safe space is not a transaction. It does not mean that you owe someone your trauma story or your juicy story, or you go to these wellness spaces and you have to share something. It does not mean that at all. You don't have to explain your pain to earn some kind of belonging. And I think a lot of kids grow up learning that message is very conditional. And so safety does not mean emotional access. Vulnerability also without consent is not safety, it's extraction. So what a safe space actually truly does allow is that it means you get to truly actually show up as you are. So when you go to these events, sometimes people are like, come as you are. And that doesn't mean you don't have to go get your eyebrows done today. It doesn't mean you don't have to wear makeup. Well, yeah, that's all true. It also means that maybe at the last event, you had a little more energy, you had a little bit of humor, you had a little bit of spark to you. And in this space, you're going to be present, but maybe you're going to be a listener and you're not going to share. And that's okay. We're not all the same person in all these spaces. And I think sometimes people are mistaken by that. And they're like, oh, you're kind of in all different places when I see you. Sometimes you're this way, sometimes you're that way. And if you find yourself saying that to someone, I think that's an indicator of like, yeah, that is an indicator of these are what spaces do. This is how we decide if it's safe or not. If I'm going to be, yay, I'm open and blah, 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 I'm going to talk, versus I'm feeling a little reserved. That's okay. That's all good. You come as you truly are. So it means you can say, I don't want to share that. That didn't land well. I need a pause. And your boundaries are respected without justification. You don't need to be explaining why you came in the way that you are today. Anyone that is accountable to providing that safe space, I think they will accept you in the place that you are when you arrive. So like, instead of asking, is this a safe space, which you truly can, but it's like, how do you know? Maybe I can invite you to notice a few quieter questions like, do I feel more relaxed or more guarded here? And why is that? Can I say no without needing to explain myself? That's a big one for me. Am I allowed to change my mind? Is my body calm, or, am I bracing? Your body usually knows before your words do. That's something that I have experienced over and over and over. That is something I teach my kids. And I think for some of us growing up, we weren't allowed to trust our gut because we had to follow hierarchy. And when adults said we had to go somewhere, we had to hug someone, we did those things. And our gut was sending us signals of like, no, not safe person, don't go do that. In my parenting world with my kids, I teach them before anything, be attuned to your body. What is your body telling you? What is it? What are the signals that are going off here? That's how you can tell, am I comfortable? Am I safe? What kind of space am I in? Do I need to abort, get out? So also, like, I think before being asked or before we choose to share something personal, we might want to ask a little bit about, am I sharing because I want to or because I feel expected to? Someone might say, hey, you have a great story, you should say something. Or, again, people pleasing, you want to step in. Like, what's the intent behind why I'm providing this information to you today? And would it be okay if I share less today? Is that okay? Is that allowed? I tried to ask myself that because I suck at that. And so that's always important to me, is like, is it okay if I share less? Because sometimes I feel like that's where I should be in whatever space I'm in. And, maybe we can also ask, like, is this space able to hold what I'm about to say? So maybe the person or the event or the people, the activists, whoever they are inviting us and feel like they've created a safe space, but maybe they haven't thought it through. And if it's not a clinical space in any other one, you might find yourself in this place of you're like, oh, no one, I shared something that people aren't able to handle. And so I think it's okay to ask myself, like, how will people receive this information? Can the people attending today be able to provide me with what I need? Maybe it's a yes, maybe it's a no, maybe it's like, well, I guess I can manage myself and I'll find out when that happens. But that's how you kind of show up for you to make sure you're caring for yourself in those moments. And honestly, I really feel like we do not owe access to, our inner world. Like that's sacred. And so everyone isn't obligated. And it's kind of weird because we do live in the era of social media and we do share all these sorts of things. I just don't want us going out there and feeling like in order to get the likes, in order to get the followers, in order to get some kind of validation, you have to put yourself out there and really care for yourself. Trust that nervous system instead of, what am I going to maybe not get or get from this if I do this? I think that if we create or hold a space, if we're someone, you and I, for people who say, okay, you're creating the safe space, there's a role that comes with that. I think that can be helpful. So if that's the case, what's the role that comes with that? I think we have to ask, okay, how do I respond when someone says no? What do I do when I feel uncomfortable or defensive? Do people feel free to disagree with me? Am I asking for vulnerability or am I offering safety first? A safe space isn't about being perfect. It is truly about being accountable. And I think that when there's many of us in there, we all have a role, we all have a part that contributes to accountability, but we can only start with ourselves. So I think if you kind of look at research on psychological safety, it would say like it shows that people thrive in groups where honesty isn't punished. And this was a lesson that I learned many a times before maybe it stuck when I was in leadership, when I was a supervisor, a manager, is that parallel to when I was parenting my kids at a young age of like, oh, okay, I have to, if I'm going to ask for it, if I'm going to say I'm open to it, what am I doing? What's the work I'm doing on myself to actually allow people to feel that I am okay with whatever information they're about to give me? And it's not about me. It's about whatever it is that they're bringing and we're talking about. Groups communicate better, repair conflict faster, and burn out less when we are in that kind of environment. And so, safety isn't necessarily softness, but maybe we look at it, it's more about permission. So if you look at maybe discomfort versus danger, because I have mentioned a few times about there is often discomfort when we're pushing up against some of these difficult conversations. And so not all discomfort is danger, and safety allows us to actually tell the difference. You know better than maybe you think you do. When something feels off, we can ask, okay, so what just shifted in my body? Going back to the nervous system. Do I need to pause, step back, or speak up? What would repair look like right now? And so I think these are just a few kind of questions to reflect on and think about. You might have some more to add, some things that you find have worked when being responsible and accountable in a space that we're trying to call safe. So I don't know, maybe as we close here, maybe the question isn't, but can be, but is this labeled as a safe space? And maybe the question is more, okay, because I can only be responsible for myself in this moment. I can only be in charge of what I do. Do I feel safe in my body here? And if I'm calling something a safe space, what am I actually offering? What does that mean? Because, as we said, safe spaces aren't something that we perform in, that we say it's on a surface level. It can't be that way. That is when danger starts to occur, because someone's going to share something that people aren't prepared to help support. There's something we co-create, and slowly it's with consent. So, have you ever been in a space that said it was safe, but didn't feel like it? And for you, what makes a space feel genuinely safe to you? I don't know. Start there. Ask yourself that. I think that will help work backwards from moments when you are in charge or trying to be responsible, whether it's with your parenting, whether it's in a friendship space, whether it's sharing and also receiving information that's a little hard. All right. Okay. As we wrap up. So I think just remember a couple of things that I like to remind myself is that clinically and especially socially, safety comes before connection. So it's not the other way around. If we want to form true connection, if we want to make changes, if we want to build a strong community, we do have to lay the foundation, and it has to be, okay, so what does it take to create this space that offers safety in order for us to have a sense of belonging and want to keep coming back to the community we want to build. Okay, so that's that. Look, these conversations are door openers, as we say. So if you want to add to this, if you have any questions, you know where I am. I always appreciate the feedback. We've been getting so much more lately, which is amazing. 3 years in, almost 160 episodes, and I think MFU is starting to resonate with a lot of you. And I appreciate all the people, especially people I don't even know around the world, that are sending messages of like, hey, check this out. Guess what? I'm interested in this. Can we talk more about that? I love that, because we're all being responsible in the community we're trying to be part of. So thank you for this It's Good to Gup Shup segment. Hope you guys are well, and we'll talk to you soon.